Hi, I'm Dave Van Oss, Agricultural Markets Manager for Libro Credit Union. Libro is very excited to be this year's presenting sponsor for the Virtual Outdoor Farm Show. We truly hope that your farm business finds great value with this upcoming session.
My role as the wealth planner is one that gives me the ability to sit down with some of the owners that work with Libro and really have an opportunity to have engaging and objective conversations about what's important to them, what it is that they want to achieve, what kind of legacy they want to leave, or how they want to treat the business that they've grown and established. I'm in a role where I basically get to open a present every single day. It's a completely different conversation, and it's a very, very enjoyable place to work. You know, transition planning, it can really mean quite a few things. At its core, it's really dealing with the business and what's going to happen with the business when the owner either decides that they want to pass it on or sell it, or really coming to a decision on what the next steps for them will be. So at a very basic level, farm transition is about making decisions. What will happen with the business when you no longer choose to be involved in that business? Options can be infinite, and anything can be modeled based on what the owner wants to see or what the proprietor or farm owner wants to see. But really there are three predominant options. In farming, we typically see a succession by a child or a transfer to a child, where the business ultimately is left to one or two or multiple children. Another option that is quite prominent is the circumstance where the business is sold. Ultimately, in this perspective, the farm owner does not have a child that is looking to move forward in the same direction, and that business ultimately will wind up being sold to someone that will carry it on from their point of view. The third option typically becomes a situation which is not so predominant for many farmers, but is winding down the business, where they will no longer choose to do what they do, sell their assets, and essentially have capital remaining that they would then use to satisfy their after-tax income requirements. From a farm planning standpoint, a farm family typically will choose to have the farm succeeded by a child, or the farm is to be transferred to a child. Whereas if we were to look at a non-farming business, typically what we wind up seeing is that that business will either be wound up or sold.
So one of my owners, they had a family farm, was in the family for the first generation, and it was integral. It was extremely important to them to keep it in the family for the second generation. In this case, the oldest son, he had started working on the farm, was working with Dad for a number of years, and Mom and Dad hit that point in their farming career where they were looking to step back, you know, to move on to the next stage, if you will. You know, our son was looking to take over. Now, it was a fairly large and complex farm operation. You know, it was under a corporation, multiple farm properties, a lot of different moving pieces, as well as other siblings to consider. With our farm transition plan, how we added value was we started with, first of all, and you know, one of the most important points as far as I'm concerned is the human component. And the main goal is to keep the family unit connected, and that essentially at the next family gathering, that when that family comes together, that, you know, they're still that same happy, strong family unit that they were prior to the transition. If we can do that right, then we did it correctly. So one of the first steps that we took was, you know, first talking with Mom and Dad about the idea of retirement. What does life after farming look like? Is there life after farming, and what could it be, right? Which is a big topic. That's a lot to get your head around. If you have spent your life as a farmer, now looking into the next chapter of your life, you know, A, you definitely need a plan, and B, you need time as a person to be able to absorb that and line up with it. Step 2 was, you know, does the son want to formally take on the farm in its entirety, in part? What does that look like? So we invited them to have basically a conversation, an informal conversation of, you know, son, it's come to that time and we're starting to plan. So the family had that meeting, and Libro wasn't a part of that meeting. That's a fairly intimate meeting, high level among family members that we simply aren't a part of. So then after that, we had a formal meeting with the family. You know, we sat down, we had our succession planner, we had our financial planner, and we had our insurance rep, and myself as the account manager. So Libro's approach is a team-based coaching approach. So the idea there is that each one of the family members will have their own dedicated coach who's a specialist in their own field to provide value to the transition, to the succession itself. Within our coaching-based team model, we've taken mom and dad through the succession plan. We brought on you know, the son as the main operator, and mom and dad are now working with our financial planner within their retirement plan. One of the biggest components to succession is to understand that at the end of the day, there's the business and there's the people who run the business. It's understanding that human component. It can be stressful to stare down the barrel of a major life change within a business that took a generation to build.
Well, I think it's very, very important that you do involve your children, not only from the standpoint of ensuring that they understand how to farm, but consequently that they want to farm. Most of the cases, as I have alluded to, being a succession or a transfer of a farm to a child, really become paramount on the success of that farm continuing with that child. And in the event that child is not interested or doesn't have the desire to farm, that really is your retirement. So it really does become very important that you do involve the child or your children so that they can understand how the business is run and to run it successfully and efficiently. I think it's really important just to have open communication. Many instances we have an older generation that has done things a certain way and doesn't choose to change that methodology until they're forced to. And this typically is by virtue of them passing away, where the farm is passed on to the child. Probably best to start involving your retirement plan to help them, educate them, guide them, let them experience some of the things that you have growing into farming, and let them learn how to farm so that they can be as successful as you are, if not more so. Yeah, a family meeting is really an opportunity to have a discussion, and the discussion is ultimately between the family, and I often refer to this as having a beer and pizza night. And really it's an opportunity, once mom and dad decide what it is that they want to do in terms of what their game plan is moving forward, how they're going to treat the farm, if there's potentially an inequality that's being created where one child is receiving a multi-million-dollar asset, where there may not be similar dollar values to potentially leave for non-farming children. This can really create hostility between the kids, especially if there's no discussion around why it's being done that way. So a family meeting really is an opportunity to have a conversation from mom and dad's standpoint with their children to basically outline, this is why we want to do things and this is how we intend to do things. It's an opportunity for everyone to air grievances, have a really good discussion, and really come to a family understanding, if I can say it that way.
There are people that feel, I'll just let my kids take care of it when I'm dead, and that never works out. And I have seen it over and over again where families are not talking after their parents pass away because their parents did not treat them equally or what they felt was fairly. Fair is not equal, they say that a lot. So number one thing that I would tell my owners is communication with all the kids, open communication, let them know what the plan is prior to death, or any prior to retirement. And the other thing is have a plan. You need a plan, because without a plan, it's not going to work. You need a plan, and you need to lean on those experts that have that knowledge to be there to help you.
I guess the most common situation that I run into is sitting down with a family and having a 2-hour-long conversation, getting to know them and what's important and what it is that they'd like to see moving forward. And then looking at the documents which outline what it is that they've just told me, and there being a complete disconnect where it could really lead to really unfortunate circumstances, not only from a financial standpoint, but also from a family harmony standpoint. So there's a big disconnect there. So I think that it's very, very important to make sure that mom and dad's intent aligns with the documents that they put in place to make sure that that does happen.
I think in a lot of cases, our farm owners are so hardworking and they're so devoted to their farm business. They don't think through to that next step when the farm business needs to transition to someone else, or when they may no longer be there. So, our owners need to consider things like what happens if mom or dad passes away. What do we do in that sort of situation? You need, as difficult as those conversations or those thoughts are, you need to address them and you need to plan for them. Our owners are very good, our farm owners are very good at running their businesses, and so they need to work equally hard at assembling a team that can help them with transition planning, so they can plan for the day when they may no longer be farming or when they want a family member to take over the farm. If I was to boil it down to the top 3 situations that we do run into, the first situation is where we have mom and dad with multiple children, and really only one of those children is taking over the farm, which creates a little bit of an issue or problem for mom and dad to contend with. How do they split their wealth amongst all their children? So they're almost led to a circumstance where they don't even know how to start or where to start that planning. So that's probably one of the most common situations that we see. But another predominant situation that I run into on a daily basis is really where, mom and dad, and typically this is the dad, has a really good idea of what his game plan is. I've sat across the table from an individual that's told me what's going to happen with that property several generations into the future. So, it's great, but, it's not documented anywhere. And it's not even documented that it's going to be left to the first generation, let alone the third or fourth, which really is a huge foresight. So I don't know where that comes from, but not documenting it creates significant issues. And then ultimately the third and most common situation that I run into, as I've alluded to, is really having that discussion with mom and dad and reviewing the documentation that they've put in place by virtue of their wills, secondary wills, their powers of attorney, and really finding that those documents in no way, shape, or form coincide with what it is that they want to achieve. So there's a big disconnect in those circumstances. So to sum that up, just to give you a little bit of a consensus on really what's at the heart of the matter, is the importance of having a conversation to establish what your estate plan is, and then having the documents that will affect that estate plan. Well, we typically are dealing with individuals with a significant amount of wealth. And depending on some of the options that are available to them with regards to proceeding with succession or transfer or sale or whatever that may be, it really is important that they do consider their financial lives outside of farming, where their incomes will come from, where they want to live after they're not farming, how the farming will get done. So there are significant circumstances and issues that should be considered outside of just dealing with the farm. And that's where working with a financial planner can help address some of the situations or circumstances outside of strictly the farm. Someone that a farm family will work with on a regular basis will be their accountant, as well as their lawyer. And those individuals, primarily the accountant, will be seen on an annual basis.
But ultimately, when we're starting to talk about transition planning, one of the considerations should be understanding some of the aspects outside of strictly the farming. So they should be dealing with a financial planning professional to help them address some of the financial circumstances outside of strictly dealing with the farm, which could also mean dealing with their immediate account manager or lending specialist, in addition to their accountant. And once they decide in the transition planning scheme of things what it is that they want to do, they will most definitely need a lawyer to help effect some of the documentation that will start that transition process. But that's being very general. Depending on the circumstances and the complexity of the business, very well may be that additional experts or professionals in their respective fields are brought in to help with that transition planning. And whether those may be agronomists or agrologists or additional specialists such as veterinarians, coaches or family enterprise advisors, it really doesn't matter who it is, so long as we understand what the vision is, we can then determine how to expand on that vision and who it is that we need to help us. I think from the perspective of what we really want to do is to create an environment that really allows the owner to not only understand how to move forward with their circumstance, but to know that they are doing it and taking care of their family and not just the farm. Knowing that Libro is here to help, and that really what's important to us is that we capture on what matters to the owner.
When I think about why Libro for succession planning, I think about Libro's ultimate goals and values. And one of my goals as an account manager in our rural communities assisting our rural farm families is to grow prosperity. So what does prosperity mean in the case of a transitioning farm family? Mostly that goal, that prosperity statement would be a smooth transition from one generation to the next. The difference with Libro is with our coaching-based model, with our relationship-based coaches, we're there from the beginning to the end of the transition and beyond. It's more than just a transaction, it's more than just a succession. The farm will continue to operate for years and hopefully generations thereafterwards. And Libro, as we're growing prosperity in southwestern Ontario, will be there to prosper with you.
I think Libro's approach is very owner-centered in that we're not focused on the profit or the bottom line for Libro. We are truly concerned about the future of the farm owners that we're dealing with, the farm businesses and the family. It's not a profit motive for us. We are truly concerned about the financial well-being and the emotional well-being of our clients.
They should work with Libro because I feel like Libro will give people honest advice that is in their best interest. I've worked here for over 20 years, and hands down, everything we do is in the owner's best interest, not Libro's best interest. So if there are things that don't make sense for them to do, we will not recommend that they do it. And that is why I feel like people should deal with Libro in all situations, but especially something like succession. You want to give advice that is good for them, not necessarily good for Libro. And we will give that advice.
Working with Libro, and not only our account managers, but also our financial planning professional team, really is about creating prosperity for the owner. Our value proposition is about ensuring that the owner is always at the heart of what matters. So we really are about providing service and creating value for the owner, and that's what's important to us.